Welcome back to CRIME-ALYZE. Today we are focusing our investigative lens on one of the most high-stakes, terrifying, and rapidly evolving active crimes in the entire nation of the United States of America, the abduction of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. For months, the public has watched this heartbreaking case play out across national headlines. But with mainstream media coverage frequently repeating the same basic sound bites, critical forensic details and criminal profiling elements have been completely overlooked. Today, we are doing a comprehensive, long deep dive into the dark reality of this crime, the chilling psychological profiles of the offenders, and the explosive forensic developments that have just broken over the last few days, if not to say over the last 24 hours. Nancy Guthrie is the mother of NBC Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie. Nancy Guthrie is vulnerable. She's an 84-year-old woman who requires a pacemaker and daily life-sustaining medication. Let's establish the exact timeline of the crime. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, Nancy was dropped off at her home in Catalina Foothills of Tucson, Arizona. She was reported missing the following day, February the 1st, after she uncharacteristically failed to attend her scheduled church service. When family members went to check on her, they walked into a horror scene. Investigators discovered undeniable signs of forced entry: a broken backyard floodlight, her white Apple Watch left abandoned on her bedroom floor, and a deeply disturbing trail of blood leading away from the home. Nancy Guthrie had been forcibly taken against her will. When we analyze a high-profile kidnapping of this magnitude, criminologists rely on grim historical data to assess the victim's probability of survival. There is a well-known, heartbreaking statistic within federal law enforcement regarding stranger abductions in the United States. The data shows that in a staggering 76% of these cases, the victim is tragically murdered within the first 3 hours of the abduction. Furthermore, these statistics reveal that the victims are usually buried within a tight 3-mile radius from the exact location where they were taken. This statistic hangs heavily over the Tucson desert today, because as we cross the solemn 6-month mark of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance this very week, the FBI, the Piedmont County Sheriff's Department, and the Guthrie family are trapped in a desperate, high-stakes psychological war with an unknown group of perpetrators. What was the true motive? Was this a cold, calculated plot to extort millions of dollars from a famous media personality called Savannah Guthrie? Or is there a darker, far more sadistic psychological element at play? An offender seeking power, maybe, or notoriety? And the total psychological destruction of a celebrity family, are those maybe, possibly, the real motives of the kidnappers? To find out, we must examine the primary pieces of communication left behind the mystery of the ransom notes. When a high-profile individual is abducted, the line of communication between the kidnappers and the family dictates the entire psychological profiling process. In the Nancy Guthrie case, this line of communication fractured into pure chaos almost immediately. So, how many ransom notes have been received so far? Officially, federal investigators have identified 3 distinct major written communications that were sent directly to media outlets like TMZ and local Tucson television stations in the days and months following the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. The first ransom note arrived on February the 2nd, a mere 24 hours after Nancy went missing. This note was written with an incredibly demanding, snarky, and hostile tone. It directly addressed Savannah Guthrie and issued a terrifying ultimatum. The authors claimed that Nancy was safe but scared and demanded a massive multi-million-dollar payout in Bitcoin. They set a strict ascending deadline. If $4 million was not deposited into a specific cryptocurrency wallet by Thursday at 5 p.m., the price would skyrocket to $6 million by the following Monday. If the final deadline wasn't met, they threatened that Nancy would be killed, coldly stating that her life was entirely in her daughter's hands. But what shocked seasoned FBI profilers wasn't just the monetary demand. It was the fact that the note contained highly specific insider details about the crime scene that had not yet been released to the public. The writer explicitly mentioned the white smartwatch lying on the bedroom floor and the destroyed floodlight in the backyard. This immediate insider knowledge led local detectives to believe they were dealing directly with the actual abductor, which makes sense. This ransom note arrived within 24 hours of Nancy Guthrie having been abducted, and they mentioned the white Apple Watch on the floor inside Nancy Guthrie's house. So that is insider information, and it does appear as if this ransom note was written and sent by the real abductors, by the real kidnappers. Then a second, far more sinister note arrived just days later. The psychological tone shifted dramatically from demanding to eerie and detached. In the second letter, the anonymous sender claimed that the kidnappers had severely underestimated Nancy's fragile health. The note stated that the 84-year-old had tragically passed away shortly after being taken and was now buried with nature. In a bizarre, chilling twist, the letter concluded with an apology from the writer, yet still left the Bitcoin address active, heavily implying that the family would still need to pay millions just to receive the location of her final resting place. For months, the investigation treated these notes as highly credible leads. But on July 1st, federal investigators dropped a massive bombshell that completely altered the trajectory of the case. The FBI officially declared that all 3 kidnapping-related messages, including a third note sent in late June claiming to have video evidence of the suspects' identities, were entirely fake. The FBI revealed that they had tested the authenticity of the cryptocurrency demands by depositing a small controlled amount of funds into the designated Bitcoin account. Weeks passed and the money went completely untouched. Criminologists recognized this behavior immediately. If a real desperate kidnapper has an active elderly hostage, they monitor that financial account second by second. Leaving the funds completely untouched proved to federal authorities that these notes were the work of cruel, opportunistic copycat extortionists, someone who likely read unreleased leaked details or had a brief glimpse of the property and decided to exploit a family's absolute agony for a quick payout. With the ransom notes heavily discredited by federal agents, the entire theory of a straightforward financial kidnapping began to fall apart. Investigators were forced to face a much darker reality. If this wasn't about the money, what was the true driving psychological force behind the abduction of Nancy Guthrie? With the primary ransom demands exposed as fraudulent extortion attempts by outside opportunists, criminal profilers are locked in a fierce debate regarding the true psychological profile of the perpetrator. And that's what this video, Here and Now by me, is about. It's about the psychological profile of the perpetrator or perpetrators. I am trying to establish the psychological profile of the perpetrators for you here in this video. When an 84-year-old woman called Nancy Guthrie is targeted and taken from a secure home, the motive generally falls into 2 distinct categories: extreme financial desperation or a deeply personalized sadistic desire for power or notoriety, or the third motive, revenge for something. Let's look at the financial profiling angle first. Even though the public ransom notes were deemed fakes, the FBI is still officially investigating this case under a broader kidnapping for ransom matrix. Why? Because targeting the mother of a famous wealthy television anchor requires an immense amount of pre-planning. The perpetrator had to conduct physical surveillance on the Tucson residence, map out Nancy's routine, and specifically identify her as a high leverage target. In the mind of a financially motivated stalker, an elderly, frail grandmother represents the perfect vulnerable asset. They believe a wealthy public family will quietly pay any price, bypass law enforcement, and clear out bank accounts just to guarantee her safe return. But forensic psychologists specializing in victimology point out a massive flaw in this theory. Traditional ransom kidnappings are exceedingly rare in modern America because tracking digital footprints, currency transfers, and physical drop-offs is virtually impossible for an amateur criminal to pull off successfully. This introduces our second, far more terrifying profile, the sadistic power seeker. In this profile, the true target of the crime isn't actually the 84-year-old victim. it's her high-profile daughter, Savannah Guthrie. True crime history is littered with twisted individuals who develop intense, dangerous fixations on media personalities and celebrities. These offenders don't just want money, they crave absolute power and control over someone famous. By taking her mother, the perpetrator instantly forces a national celebrity into a state of total submissive desperation. Think about the psychological impact. Over the last 6 months, Savannah Guthrie and her siblings have released 7 separate intensely emotional video messages on social media, actively begging the captors for answers, crying on camera, and pleading for their mother's location. To a sadistic, narcissistic offender watching a powerful traditional national news anchor break down in complete agony on the public stage provides an intense, intoxicating rush of omnipotence. They are controlling the narrative of a celebrity's life. This theory also forces us to confront the grim reality of the 76% homicide statistic. If the offender is a disorganized, sadistic individual driven by an obsessive fixation, an 84-year-old woman requiring specialized medical care would become a logistical liability almost immediately. The trail of blood found outside her home indicates that physical violence was utilized right at the start of the abduction. If the victim succumbed to her injuries or the stress of the event within those critical first 3 hours, a sadistic offender would likely pivot from a hostage scenario to a psychological game of cat and mouse with law enforcement, basking in the national media attention while keeping the true location of the victim a closely guarded secret. This brings us directly to the massive, breaking forensic developments that have completely upended the investigation over the last 24 hours. For months, the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI have remained tight-lipped, leaving the public to believe the case had hit a complete and total standstill. But the authorities have just broken their silence, releasing critical, definitive forensic data regarding the physical evidence recovered from the crime scene. First, let's address the hair sample. Early on, forensic technicians recovered a single isolated strand of hair inside the Tucson home that did not belong to Nancy Guthrie. True crime forums went wild, believing this microscopic piece of evidence would instantly yield a CODIS DNA match and unmask the killer. However, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos officially announced that extensive federal testing on the hair sample has come back entirely inconclusive. The FBI's Phoenix office verified that the sample yielded absolutely no viable genetic results and has been completely ruled out as a lead to a suspect. But while the hair sample proved to be a dead end, the secondary forensic update is nothing short of explosive. Sheriff Nanos revealed that crime labs across the United States are currently working together to untangle a highly complex, groundbreaking mixed DNA profile recovered from the blood and physical evidence left at the scene. This isn't a clean single-source DNA sample. Forensic scientists have confirmed that the genetic material is a highly intricate mixture containing the DNA of up to 4 different individuals. In the world of forensic science, a mixed DNA profile of 4 people presents an extraordinary clinical challenge. It means multiple individuals were physically present, touching surfaces, or actively bleeding during the violent struggle inside Nancy's home. This completely shatters the theory of a lone wolf stalker. We are officially looking at a sophisticated, multi-personal criminal conspiracy. Furthermore, this forensic breakthrough has triggered intense legal and political warfare in Arizona. Just hours ago, lawyers representing 2 local men, Carlos Palazuelos and Daniel Maddox, officially filed a massive legal claim against Sheriff Chris Nanos and his lead detective. Back in February, these 2 men were abruptly detained, handcuffed, and interrogated for several hours as potential suspects before being released without any charges. Their legal team is now alleging wrongful arrest and severe property damage, claiming local law enforcement acted out of pure panic and tunnel vision due to the immense pressure of a celebrity investigation. In fact, the internal tension has grown so severe that the Pima County Sheriff's Department is actively defending its record against public criticism and sharp allegations from the FBI itself. Reports indicate that federal agents have accused local law enforcement of running a chaotic initial investigation and actively shutting out federal resources during the critical early days of the abduction. This jurisdictional infighting is the ultimate nightmare in an active kidnapping case, creating administrative friction while a vulnerable 84-year-old woman remains missing. As we draw this comprehensive investigation by myself here in this video to a close, the true picture of the Nancy Guthrie case is both terrifying and deeply urgent. We're no longer looking at a simple rumor about a disgruntled student or a straightforward successful ransom plot. The forensic truth reveals a coordinated attack executed by multiple individuals, leaving behind a complex mixed DNA footprint that the nation's top labs were desperately trying to decode. We are watching a family trapped in a relentless psychological nightmare, forced to endure fraudulent extortion notes while simultaneously begging a silent, potentially sadistic offender for mercy. And through it all, we must remember the human being at the center of this storm, Nancy Guthrie, is not just a headline. She is a mother, she is a grandmother, and she is a vulnerable member of our community who was brutally taken from the safety of her own home. Her family has maintained a massive active $1 million reward for any information that leads to her recovery. As Savannah Guthrie stated in a deeply emotional public plea just a short while ago, she said, "Our family is in agony. We are in a nightmare that will not end. But we will never stop looking. I truly believe it is never too late to do the right thing." The desert surrounding Tucson holds the final answer to this mystery. Whether the statistical reality of those critical first 3 hours holds true or whether Nancy is still out there waiting to be found, the criminal network responsible for this atrocity left their genetic code behind in that house. It is only a matter of time before forensic science catches up to them. We are intensely waiting for the result of the DNA analysis to find out who these 4 DNA profiles belong to, whether or not there were 4 individuals in Nancy Guthrie's mansion during the time of the kidnapping, or whether there were only 1 or 2 kidnappers in the mansion during the kidnapping, and that there were 1 or 2 other persons who mixed their DNA accidentally into the DNA which was already in the mansion. We are intensely waiting for an answer regarding that. It is unfortunately that the labs were unable to extract usable DNA from that 1 strand of hair. Thank you for spending this time with me here on CRIME-ALYZE. This is an active breaking investigation, and your voice matters to me. Please drop a comment below. Please answer the question in the comment box below for me. Do you believe this multi-person DNA profile points to a highly organized professional ring, or does it point to a localized conspiracy? I would like to hear your opinion, your analysis, and your comments. Please write it into the comments below. I read every single comment, and I can't wait to read your comment and your analysis regarding this video and regarding the entire Nancy Guthrie kidnapping and Nancy Guthrie abduction. Please click the subscribe button now. Please turn on notifications so that you can stay updated on every major forensic breakthrough which happens, and so that you will be updated when I publish the next important video here on this channel regarding the Nancy Guthrie abduction, regarding the Nancy Guthrie kidnapping, and regarding other important true crime, real crime cases. And I will see you in the next one.